Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. First of all, welcome to our next webinar on Agile Scrum series. So today's topic is about introduction to Agile. And my name is Nazir Afal. I'm the CEO and founder at Resemble Systems. I like to quickly walk you through the agenda for today. And also the speaker for today is Mr. Muhammad Waji. Waji actually has spoken to you last week on the entire project delivery on Agile Scrum methodology. It was a deep dive session in terms of giving you a very high level overview with a lot of content. And I hope you have enjoyed the last week's session. And if in case you missed it, please feel free to go to our YouTube channel and replay those recording. So today's topic is about a very specific on what is Agile Scrum and how the Agile Scrum can be used for managing your teams, your events, and with your assets that is related to your projects. And what exactly is the Agile Scrum framework is very important for all of us to understand. And what are the certain techniques and certain requirements, and how do we do the estimation for the Agile based project delivery between a vendor and as a customer relationship, and how do we really progress, how do we really track this progress on the Agile projects. We're also very interesting. And at the end there is a Q&A session. That's the session's agenda for today. And Muhammad Waji is our senior project manager managing our PMO department and really taking the project management to a next level within Resemble Systems as well as for our customers. We would like to really continue our journey of delivering projects. So far, we have delivered 250 plus projects in the last 10 years or so. We have a lot of learned lessons in the past, and we have applied those lessons into sort of innovative ideas that how we can further enhance and optimize, cost of the project, the time for the project, and most importantly, the on-time delivery of the project. So we taken into all these things into consideration, and we thought, oh, why don't we run series of webinars on introducing Agile Scrum methodology and so on. So with that, I will leave the floor to Waji to get started. Waji, over to you.
Thank you, Nazir. Thank you very much for that introduction and taking us through the agenda. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this second webinar on Introduction to Agile. For those of you who had joined the previous webinar, we spoke a lot about Agile methodology. How is it different from the waterfall methodology that we use, right? What are the different benefits? And how eventually a customer is benefited by using the Agile approach, because he gets to constantly inspect the product or the project while we are doing iterative approach during the project, where we show the customer what has been developed or what has been created so far after a particular sprint is over. So we spoke on a few of the advantages and disadvantages of waterfall, and this was the basic of the first webinar. So here we will focus on one of the methodologies of Agile, which is used, as we saw in the previous webinar. It's about 66% of the companies who have adopted Agile in their culture use a specific way of doing Agile projects is called Scrum. So this webinar is mostly focused on what is Scrum, how did it come into existence, what are the different components of Scrum, the different team members, right? What are the different artifacts, how do we do it? And this webinar will mostly focus on that. Just before I get started into the the Scrum part of it, these are some companies. This was a slide that I missed to add in the last webinar. So these are companies, right? Very famous companies. If you see the first few companies on top: Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook. So these are the top companies in the world in terms of software and IT. Then you have some telecom companies across the world like T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon. And banks, if you see, we have Ernst & Young, we have consultancy firms, Allstate, insurance we have. And then if you look at the fourth row, We have big companies, the in automobile industry, right? The BMW, Kawasaki, Honda, Lexus, Ford, in fact, being one of the largest manufacturers in the world. Toyota. So if you see, all these companies have adopted Agile in some or the other form, right? Whatever has worked for them. Maybe pure Agile, maybe a hybrid of Agile, maybe in Agile extreme programming or Scrum. So, but some form of Agile is used in these companies. So that just shows goes to show that how important Agile is and how big companies like these deliver their products in the market using Agile methodology. So moving on, what is Scrum, right? Scrum is a framework where people address problems, they collaborate productively and create products which are of the highest possible value. Now, Scrum is founded on the principle of empiricism and lean thinking. So, lean, I'm sure you must have heard this word lean a lot of places, right? Six Sigma has been there in the market for very long. So, lean is something which reduces waste, right? So, what is empiricism? Empiricism comes from constantly inspecting and adopting. So, you see what has been done, you observe, and then you kind of work on it. You try to make it better, that you're constantly adapting, you're constantly creating better value, right? So that is what Scrum is based out, Scrum is founded on. That's the basis of Scrum. So Scrum employs a very iterative, incremental approach, like we saw in the last webinar also. What do you mean by iterative and incremental? We do not plan everything we do not take up everything after planning. We break it down into different phases, right? Small chunks of work, which we call iteration, or in the language of Scrum, we call it a sprint, right? So we break it down to have more control and reduce the risk, and work collaboratively. So the people who are working on it, the developers, the actual team which is delivering the product, collaborates with the customer, understands if the customer is happy, not happy, and then progresses on. So this is the basis. This is the basis of why Scrum was founded. So most of the information that you will see here on Scrum, I have taken it from scrum.org, which is run by the founders of Scrum. So you will see who they are, and how did it come into existence. Going back in time a little. So there's a lot of text here, but I will try to break it down in a way that it is easily digestible. So there were two business very famous business people in Japan, right? So they wrote an article in 1986 for business Harvard Business Review, very famously known as HBR, right? So they wrote an article called the new product development game. The new is actually, it's mentioned twice in their paper. So they borrowed the word Scrum from rugby. So if you see the picture here, right, that is actual meaning of Scrum. Scrum means, right, the team members of both the teams. So there are two teams, right, the actual team and the opposite team. So they all get together, right? They form a team, and then a ball is thrown in between, and they'll have to move the ball using their legs. And whichever team, there's one member who stands outside, whichever team member picks the ball first gets a chance to move on with the game, right? So this is where they took it from. What was the essence of taking it from that? That the whole team, even though, right, one guy is somebody who's got a different skill who runs forward, and there's one person who runs backward, and different team members have different skills. But when this thing is happening, all of them come together, right, and they collaborate with each other to win that ball, right? So they were inspired from there, and they put the word Scrum, right? And this is where 1986 was the first time that the Scrum came into existence. And then in early 90s, in 1990s, there were two very famous people in the software industry in the US. One was Ken Schwaber, and the other is Jeff Sutherland, right? So they are the people who run this scrum.org, the website which I told you. So they started working their respective companies, and they started developing this new method that these two Japanese people actually wrote in their paper. And then in 2001, like we discussed in the last webinar, we had the Scrum the Scrum conference that happened, right? The Agile conference that happened, where the manifesto came out, and the world actually came to know that there's a way of doing things better. So they were one of the founding members of these Agile manifesto. So that's when the Scrum came into picture. In 2002, the Scrum has been widely adopted. And since 2009, they started publishing this guide called the Scrum Guide. Right now, the latest version was updated in November 2020. So most of the information that you see here is taken out of the Scrum Guide. So this is a little history of the Scrum. Moving on. So Scrum Team, right? So So starting off, so Scrum has a team. It has some artifacts and the way of estimation. We will look at it in the future slides. So what is Scrum teams? Scrum teams are cross-functional teams, which means that the once a Scrum team is formed, all necessary skills, right? All necessary skills needed to complete that sprint or the project or the task that has been selected for that particular sprint will get done by this team only. They will not look outside. For example, if you look at the diagram on the left, the picture on the left, the traditional teams, what happens in traditional teams, there is a project manager or a team leader, and there are different people who report to him from different functional departments, right? So there is a UI UX department, there's a design department, maybe there is a QA department, there is a technical department, IT infrastructure department. So different departments report to the manager. But in Agile, what happens, we form a team of close to 8 to maximum minimum of 4 members and maximum of 10 members, because Scrum or Agile value believes that if there are more than 10 people, it becomes really difficult for the team to collaborate easily. The lesser the people, easier for them to talk to each other and collaborate. That is the reason why we have less number of people. So in Agile teams, what happens, there is a Scrum Master. We look at the roles, right? We look at the different roles. But Agile team, the team is self-sufficient. If I have to put it in a better way, they are self-sufficient. So we have a UI UX designer, we have a say maybe 2 developers, right, on QA and everybody. So if you look on the picture on the right, so in functional roles, right, we have the same thing that I told you, that we have different business analysis department and people report here. But in cross-functional teams or in Agile teams, we form different teams, right? For example, Agile team 1. So we have, maybe here it says 4 developers and 1 UI design and then two quality analysts, and then we name these teams within the company, right? And then these people are put into different projects. So this is the main thing of Scrum. So there is a self-sufficient cross-functional team which will deliver the product. Let's move on. So like I told you, a Scrum team should be small enough to collaborate, and typically it is less than 10 people. So the lesser the team is, they will communicate easily and they're more productive. They have any issues, they talk to each other and they get it done. Right? It is very rare that if the Scrum team is not able to resolve within themselves, is when they will reach out outside the team. Say maybe for a solution architect who's looking into multiple projects, right? They will reach out and say, yeah, we've tried our best, right? None of us are able to resolve this. We need your help. So that is when the team looks for an external help. Otherwise, the team is very self-sufficient. So if you look on the picture on the right, so these are some roles which we will study in detail, which we will look into in detail. So we have a person called product owner. We have a Scrum Master. Then we have the team. So if you look at the team here, we have the developer, designer, QA. Like this is called a Scrum team. Now, the Scrum team is responsible for all product-related activities from the stakeholder collaboration. There is nobody else. There is no separate business analyst who works with them, right? There is no separate, say maybe a separate team, or there is no sub-team within this team. It's not like they will take the task and then delegate it to somebody. No, they will take the task and complete it. So if you see here, the entire Scrum team is accountable for creating valuable, useful increment in every sprint. So this is the Scrum team. Let's look into the roles a little further now, right? So the first role that we have to look at is a product owner. Now, who's a product owner? Product owner is somebody who's the customer facing, right? He maintains the backlog. So we will study what backlog is, and a backlog is nothing but, you can say, it's a requirement, right? Now, he's the person who maintains the requirement, communicates with the customers, and he creates something called a product vision. So the first thing that the product owner does is creating a vision. What is a vision? For example, the customer's vision is, say for example, customer is a banking client. The customer says, okay, my vision is to have a banking app, a mobile app for both Android and iOS. Now that's the vision, right? He maintains the vision and makes sure that we do not deviate from the vision. That's his responsibility. Nobody else in the Scrum team, say the Scrum Master or the Scrum team members, have nothing to do with the vision. He's the whole, he's fully responsible for maintaining the vision. Next, what he does is he develops something called product roadmap. Product roadmap in the sense, for example, features, right? From the product vision, say I need an app. So what will the first thing be in the app, right? Of the first feature maybe is login, and after login we will see what is the say maybe the account balance in the savings account, the current account, and the credit card. Okay, that's the roadmap. That's the feature first release. For example, the release is planned after 2 months. Like the first app is launched, the first version of the app is launched. What are the first few features? Then maybe release 2, which happens after 6 months. Maybe we can look at having something like loan application, knowing your credit score, what is your credit score, something like that. So he divides the different the entire requirement into different things. So the requirement here in Scrum is called backlog, right? He's solely responsible for maintaining this. What are some other activities that he does? Right, ensure highest value items are worked on. So now customer is giving lot of requirement, so but it is the responsibility of the product owner to categorize this, so to prioritize this we already we discussed about it in the last webinar also. So it is his responsibility to value or to prioritize the highest value items starting, and then it goes on, right? Then answer the questions of the team. Now since he's an expert, so product owner is somebody who's an expert. He knows the customer's requirement, and he also knows the technology and the delivery, the value that is to be derived out of this product or the project, right? So whenever the team members, the development team members have any questions, he's the one who will answer them, right? And he will also dictate what is the next set of actions that has to be done, like what is the next set of items, backlog items that have to be pulled out from the backlog and go, and to be worked on in the each iteration or the sprint that the team is planned. So this is the responsibility of a product owner. The next team member in the Scrum team is called a Scrum Master. Scrum Master is more like a servant leader. Servant leader, when you say, he does not have control over the team, right? He does not say, team, you have to do this, you have to do this, right? He does not do that. What is he doing? He's kind of being a servant leader. So what happens is he keeps a call every day, a stand-up meeting. It is called a stand-up meeting in the Scrum world. So he keeps a stand-up meeting and he asks the team, you were supposed to, this task was planned yesterday. Have you completed this? The team says yes or no. If no, what is an issue. So they say that, we had to kind of we are not getting access to this particular server, or we are not able to access this particular site, or I do not have permissions, or whatever. So it becomes Scrum Master's responsibility to have this thing, these issues or challenges the team is having to be resolved. In Scrum language, again, these are called impediments, right? Impediments are something which are some issues and challenges that the team is facing, which the Scrum Master will look into and try to resolve. It is not the team's responsibility to do it. So that is why we have a dedicated person called Scrum Master, right? And then he will make sure that the Scrum is followed, right? The backlog, the items from the backlog are maintained, given, once it is given by the product owner. He makes sure that they are all, updated, whatever system you're using, right? There are different tools that can be used, or a simple an Excel can be used, right? So are those items being properly assigned, which team is doing what, right? I mean, which team member is doing what. So he just monitors. There's absolutely no control. That is why there is a word which is used called as servant leader. That he's a leader, but he does not have that aggressive or very assertive kind of a thing to get things moving. So that's why we again come back to the same old thing of the team is self-organizing, right? They are very collaborative and they're self-organizing. So they know what has to be done and they plan on delivering it, right? And what are some other things that the Scrum Master does? Works with other Scrum Masters in the organization. Say, example, this is a big project, right? It's a very big project where there are different teams. The entire project has been divided into different Scrum teams. So it is again the Scrum Master's responsibility to talk to the Scrum Master of the other teams and try to understand if there are any challenges, if his team can help that other team, or if he needs some help from the other team. So he's like a link between the different Scrum teams. Now, finally, the developing team, right? The team which gets the work done, the development team. So if you look here, delivers the chosen backlog items. So the backlog items are chosen by the product owner, and they are categorized and given it to the Scrum Master and the team, and they kind of work on it. Attend the regular Scrum meetings. So there are different Scrum meetings which we will see later, right? There is one meeting at the start of the sprint, and there is one while once you finish the sprint, and there are a couple of meetings. So they participate in these meetings, try to understand and give their feedback, and they observe. And what other important thing that we have to understand here is that, unlike other traditional methods where the team is asked to do something, here the team can also share their ideas. Say that, Mr. Product Owner, we believe that if we do this task this way, it is much better to the customer, right? The customer is asking for maybe immediately for example, I'm saying, right, just an example, that if the product owner says that as per the requirement, right, if the customer inputs his password once wrong, then the customer wants it to be logged, right? And he has to write a mail to unlock his account, right, the app. So this is what the requirement is. But the team feels that this is too cumbersome for the customer. Instead of that, if the account is locked, he can give his mobile number and an OTP comes to his mobile, and then he can immediately unlock. Right? This is a feedback which is given by the team. The product owner takes it and then informs to the customer, and if the customer likes it, then he puts it as a part of the backlog, one of the items or tasks that has to be done by the team. So the team members are also, right, they find best ways or the more easier ways to get things done, which will value the end output, right, the customer, to eventually make the customer and the product more valuable, right? So these are the three roles of Scrum. So we have product owner, the Scrum master, and the Scrum team, right? Moving on. So these are different events. So what are events? So now assume that a project is we get a project, the team is formed, right? We have identified a product owner, we have identified the Scrum master, and the Scrum team is formed. Now, right, we have to follow certain ceremonies, or these are called Scrum ceremonies or Scrum events. Now, what is the first event? Sprint planning, right? If you see here, there is sprint planning and there is sprint, a daily Scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. Let me just quickly tell you what are the different events. Sprint planning is a process where the people, right, the team, which is the product owner, the Scrum master, and the development team, uh, selects the tasks from the backlog. Backlog is what? The requirement, right? So, and it is prioritized what has to go first, right? What has to be done in the first 2 weeks, what has to be done after the 2 weeks, and then what has to be done in the next 3 months. So the backlog is prioritized. So sprint planning, what happens? They plan and they pull some items from the backlog, and then they decide on taking these items in the sprint. The items which are taken from the product backlog eventually move to something called a sprint backlog. We will look at it later. There's a diagram, there's a flow, the overall flow which you see, which is easier to kind of relate to whatever I'm saying now, which we will see in next couple of slides. Right, so sprint planning is basically they will plan. That's where the estimation happens, where they sit and see, okay, these are some tasks we've pulled out to do now. So what is the estimation? What is the time required to finish these tasks? So all this discussions happen in the sprint meeting. Then the actual sprint. What is actual sprint? The actual sprint is the time taken to complete those activities, to finish those tasks that have been taken from the product backlog. Now, next is the daily stand up, which I told you, daily stand up is nothing but a meeting which happens for 10 to 15 minutes, where each member of the team gives a brief update of what happened, right? What did he do? What did he do yesterday? What happened today? And what is the plan for tomorrow? And also, not only just inform what is going on, right? What is his work progress like, but also if there are any challenges, if there are any issues, they immediately speak. Now, see, this is where the collaboration comes in. So, what happens in orthodox or what happens in typical work, if it's not an agile product, right? The ideally the person who's doing will not even open up and say, right? It's only when the manager or the team leader or the client says that I was expecting this, and why is it not completed? That's when the team leader or the manager goes back to the person and asks that you were supposed to complete this, what happened? He will then respond, say that, oh, I had an issue and I've been working on this issue from past 4 days. I needed somebody's help and that person is on leave, and that's why I put this task on hold. Why then the project is delayed? We've lost already 4 days. The task that had to be completed 5 days prior is already gone, right? So these are some challenges to the agile way. Is what agile is: being proactive, adaptive, right, and constantly inspecting. So that's when the stand up is very important. So every day the team gives the update of what's happening, what is the task, where are they, so that the it can be immediately addressed rather than keeping it for a very long time. Moving on to sprint review. Sprint review is when at the end of the sprint, like we know, sprint is something, sprint is nothing but tenure, right? It can be something of 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and 4 weeks. Ideally, the Agile manifesto or the people in the Agile say that the sprint should not be more than 4 weeks, right? So it should be either 1 week or up to maximum 4 weeks. So for example, we are having a sprint of 1 week where we take certain items and we plan to complete, and then we've completed something, we show it to the customer, right? A demo happens at the end of the sprint. Now, this is called a sprint review, where we show the customer that, Mr. Customer, say same example of banking app, right? So we say that, Mr. Customer, we've developed this app. See, this is how you log in. Right, a live demo is given to the customer. This is where you log in. This is the screen. Once you log in, there are three things: your savings account, your current account, and your loan details that you can check. So this is what we've done. So as part of the next sprint, we will add the something else, right? So the customer looks at it and says, okay, yeah, this is what I wanted. Or he says, no, 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 the screen doesn't look good. Or no, this is a functionality. They talk a lot of things, right? This is where the demo happens in sprint review, right? In the sprint review. And the last Scrum event is called sprint retrospective. That is at the end of the sprint. Now the team, now this is without the customer, right? The team sits together and understands what went well and what did not go well. So before starting the next sprint, what is it that we can adapt, or what is it that we can take from our previous sprint that will help us to become better in our upcoming sprint. So this is called a retrospective. Retrospective is what? Looking back and trying to become better in the future. That is called retrospective, right? I hope this was clear. Now this is these are Scrum artifacts. Now I told you about product backlog, right? Product backlog is what? Nothing but requirements. If you look at the diagram, if you look at the picture on the left, you see this is, just imagine these slabs or these tiles to be the tasks or the requirement. So what does a product owner do? He will estimate, right? We will look at the estimation, and then if there's something new that has to go, he will put it here, and then reprioritization happens. For example, the green ones that you see here were supposed to happen here, right? Probably it can go on top or it can come on down depending on what the client wants, right? Which feature he wants or what does he want to see first. And then if you see here, they keep refining, and then if the items eventually are not required by the client, if he starts finding value in what the team has already delivered, they will delete this. So this is just grooming the product backlog, or making sure that the product backlog is always updated, prioritized, and is updated all the time for the team to pick up the task from the top. So from here, the team will always pick it up from here, not from the center or from the bottom. So if example 1, 2, 3, 4 tasks are done, right? They are marked completed and gone. Then the team comes back to the product backlog and picks up the next task, or as advised by the product owner. Now, it is a responsibility of the product owner to keep this backlog updated all the time, right? Now, this is how the sprint backlog. I told you about sprint backlog, right? Sprint backlog is what? Activity or the tasks that are taken from the product backlog, which will be completed in the 1 week, 2 week, or the 3 week sprint period that we are planning. So for example, if you see here, this is the product backlog, right? Here, the orange one. So we have feature 1, feature 2, 3, 4, 5. This is how we've planned. This is how the backlog is maintained. The first two features are taken and part of the first release, say release 1.0, right? And they are broken down into user stories. We will look at the user stories a little later. And this, whenever they break it down, that what task will go, this is called a sprint backlog. So this is how the team picks up what has to be done, right? And then, for example, they say that, okay, the first sprint will be able to do only feature 1 and 2. Then what happens? Sprint 3 and for feature 3 and 4, they take it to the next sprint. So this is how it is planned. And for example, here on the left, if you see that feature 4, the client says, no, feature 4 is, I think it is not very important. So what happens? Feature 4 goes down and feature 5 takes its place. Or maybe feature 7 or 8, which the client thought was not important, comes here. So when the team finishes the sprint and comes to pick up the next item, they will pick up the feature 8, which was supposed to be done later. So this is how it is. It becomes very easy for the client, right, to say that I want this feature to go and I want that feature to go, rather than in a waterfall methodology or in an orthodox methodology. The entire plan is actually derived right in the start, and then we sign off on the project plan. It is shared with the customer, and then we try to stick onto it. And any change which comes, we take it as a change request involving financials, extending timelines, adding resources. So this is the advantage of doing agile, right? The customer and the product owner can immediately talk to each other, collaborate, and say which feature is more important to the client, which has to be released in the next cycle, say maybe in a month or 2 months. So this is the product backlog and the sprint backlog. Now, whatever we spoke so far, right? The Scrum team which we started, and the different events of the different Scrum events, and the product backlog and the sprint backlog. How does it all put together? If you put together, how does it work in a flow? So if you see here, right on the left, we have input coming from the customer or the stakeholder, whoever is has given us this product, the project, right? They talk to the product owner here. The product owner starts maintaining the product backlog, and he ranks it or prioritizes it the way the customer wants it. And then, right, the team takes, starting at the top, like I told you, the team takes whatever, say for example 1, 2, 3 items were the important items. They take it and they commit to deliver it in the coming sprint. So we have the team here, right, which is a mix of your QA, the developers, the architect, and everybody. Then this sprint, whatever they took, is called a sprint backlog, right? And this happens during the sprint meeting. And then the sprint backlog is broken down into different tasks, right? Broken down into doable tasks, right? And then this sprint, like I told you, from 1 to 4 weeks, right? Minimum 1 week and maximum 4 weeks. So they do it. And then every 24 hours, we have the stand up daily stand up where the team discusses, and the burn down chart, which we will see later, tracks the progress, the velocity, like how efficiently the team is performing and completing these tasks. And who monitors all this? The scrum master, like we discussed. So he's watching closely and seeing that the team is not having any issues and it is going as we progressed as we planned. And then finally we spoke about the sprint review. Once this 1 or 4 weeks, say assume it was a 2 week sprint, once it is done, then we'll have the sprint review where we show the finished work to the customer. And then once the customer, whatever feedback he gives, accepts it or rejects it, we take it, and then a sprint retrospective happens. I hope this flow or this diagram is making is making all of you to put together all the things that we've spoken in the past few slides. So I hope it is clear. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, we've got the requirements, right? Now, the question that will come to our mind is, okay, now we've got the requirements. How is Agile different in breaking this, right? So there are different. How do we decompose in Agile? So generally, what happens in a PMI methodology or in a general project methodologies, we use something called work breakdown structure, right? For example, build a house is the project we are doing. So the work breakdown structure say will be 1.1 will be build a hall, 1.2 will be build a kitchen, 1.3 will be build a bedroom, right? And then that 1.1, which is build a hall, will be further broken down, right? For example, build a living room within the hall, right? And 1.1.1 will be pillars. So it goes on like that, right? That's the usual way of doing it. But here it is done a little differently, right? It starts off with something called theme. On the left, if you see, it is called theme, and then it is broken down into epics. We will look at an example which is on the right, but if you can focus here, the theme is the main thing, right? Which is broken down into epics. The epics are broken down into something called user stories, right? And the user stories are eventually broken down into tasks. Now these tasks are the things that get executed at the development level, right? So this is how it is done. So if I have to tell you what is a theme, epic, user story, and a task, you can see an example on the right, right? So there is an e-commerce customer, right? He's given a project that he wants to develop an e-commerce website, right? That is, he has an e-commerce business. He wants to develop a website. What? So that's the whole project, right? That's the entire project. And one of the themes is something that comes just below the main project, right? Which is the product vision, the product vision, which is maintained by the product owner. So one of the theme is to have a wish list, right? You know what is a wish list. So for example, you go to Amazon.com or you go to another shopping website. There is an option, if you like something, you wish it, right? You kind of click on a heart button or something, add to wish list. It gets added to your wish list, right? So this is the idea that the customer has. It says, okay, I am developing a website, e-commerce website. Now I want to have a wish list button. So that wish list button or the wish list the feature becomes the theme, right? Then next is epics. What is an epic? As a customer, so in Scrum, right, whenever we take the requirement, we always start as a customer, I want to do this. As a customer or as a user, I want to achieve this. So the customer is saying, as a customer, I want to be able to have wish list so that I can come back to buy products later, right? That becomes an epic. Now, what is a user story to achieve that, right? What are the different things that we need to do? So what do we need to do? As a customer, he should be able to save the product in the wish list, and as a customer, he should be able to view it. Once he saves it, later whenever he comes, he has to view. So that the epic gets broken down into something called stories. Now, eventually, to do these stories, we need to do tasks, right? So then eventually the stories are broken down into tasks. So task is the last level of the decomposition. So what is a task? Put add with wish list on each page, right? So that is what the team will do. Then they will create a new database to store this information, whichever whatever the customer is wish list, wish listing. Then create page to display the user's wish list and add wish list to the link homepage. So these are the tasks needed to do these two things, which are part of an epic, which will eventually serve the purpose of having a wish list. I hope I was able to explain to all of you present on the webinar on what is a theme, an epic, a story, and a task. You don't have to remember this, but this is how the work is decomposed in a agile or a Scrum methodology, right? So just a minute, please. I think there are a few people who are raising their hands. Just give me a minute while I check if there's something important I need to answer. Great. So I think Mr. Laikuddin is saying it's a perfect example. I think it was because of for this. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. So to continue, so this is how it is broken down, right? If you have more questions on this, we can come back during the question and answer session and again kind of give one or two examples and look at it. So I'll move on. Yeah. Now we know how to decompose, right? Now how do we estimate? Now we have to estimate. Now one important thing that you have to remember is in Agile or in Scrum, we do not estimate theme or we do not estimate epics. We estimate right from the user stories. So how long will user story take to do? And then user stories are done in points, right? And then tasks are done in hours. So we will look at that right in the coming slides. But just to understand, we do not estimate epics. So we do not say, okay, the customer wants to have a wish list, it will take 6 months or 3 months or 2 months. We do not do that. And also we do not come to a wish list and say, okay, customer wants to have a wish list, I think it will take about 3 months. We again do not do this. We generally try to do this in a waterfall project, but we do not do this in Agile. We come back and start estimating only from this level, the stories level. Okay, the customer wants to save a product and view the product. Okay, so how can we, how long will it take for the team to do it, right? So we start estimating from the stories level. One very important thing to remember, we do not estimate at a epic or a theme level, right? So moving on, why estimate, right? We discussed in the last webinar that human beings, we as human beings are very I mean, not very, we are not very good at estimating, right? And I give you a very I give you an example. I'm sure people who had joined the last webinar will recall. I gave you an example of a car and a truck, right? Similar example I'm putting here in the thing. So for example, somebody looks at some if we ask somebody that this is a small rock, right? And you take 2 days to break this rock, right? And then if I tell him, I show him this and tell him how long do you think you will take time to break this, he will see that relatively, right? Very important word, relate. He will relate this rock to this and see that, okay, I think it is just twice as big, I think so, right? So if I'm taking 2 days to do this, I will take 4 days to do this, right? So it becomes very easy. So if you see here, Agile, right, is always emphasizes on relative estimation. It does not have something called an absolute estimation where we say, okay, I have to create a website, I think it will take 8 months, 6 months, and then what I do, I slowly break up the task in a PMI or a sorry, in a orthodox waterfall methodology, and try to work on it, right? It is called a top down approach, right? And we also have something called bottom up approach, where I take the task. Okay, I need 10 tasks to finish this. For example, I need 4 pillars of flooring or a thing, and then after I complete that, I will be able, my living room will be finished. After that, it goes on. So when you go from the below, it is called a bottom up approach, and you try to break things from the top, it is called a top down approach, right? In Agile, we always do a top down approach, and we will come to a level, and we'll start estimating a level where we are confident, which I told you is the user story, right? Um, so if you see one more example here, right? If you just if I just give you for example, if somebody is just given a banana and asked, if, for example, a kg of banana, if you say how long will you take to eat, he might not be able to answer, right? But if you give separate fruits here and then you make him eat one fruit, say for example something else, right? And he will be able to know that, okay, I was able to eat this at this point of time, and I will take a certain number of time to eat that. So a lot of comparative or a relative estimation is happening. So this was just an example, two examples to show you that how it is better to always go with relative, right? So we will see how we do it. These are the different, there are a lot of methods of estimation in Agile. I've taken the top ones that are used across the world. Right now, let's start. Before we start here, one important thing that I would like to tell you is, like I told you, let me just go back here, right? We will start with the story, right? We will start estimating at this level, and then we come to this level. So when we estimate at this level, use a story, right? We call it story points, right? We give a point to each story. Okay. For example, right? Let's come to this example and say, I I as a customer want to save a product in my wish list, right? We give certain points to this. How do we give a points? We will look into the, I'll come back to you to the slide that I was in. But what I want to show here is, for each story point we give certain points. For each user story we give a point, and that point is known as story points, right? Just remember this. Now let's come back here. Okay. The first way of estimation is called planning poker. Planning poker. So poker, you must have heard, all of you must have heard about poker. It's a card game, right? So what happens in planning poker is, a set of cards are given to the team members, the Scrum team members, right? Who are the developers? Maybe the team is of 4 members, 6 members, 7 members, doesn't matter. Each of them are given a card, right? And a user story. So what happens is, ideally, people do it in a different ways of doing it. But ideally, what happens? The Scrum team, right, which is a product owner, the Scrum master, and the team gets into a meeting room, and they are this. Sticky notes, right? They are the sticky notes where the product owner writes the story points. He says, okay, the customer wants to add a wish list. This is one story point. And then the other story point is the customer wants to see his wish list later. So, right, that's a second user story. So there are two user stories. And like that, what he does, he has a lot of user stories written, he sticks it to the board or keeps it on the table, right? And then he says, okay, so to do, for example, user story, how long do you think the team needs the time to finish one story? So the team selects a card, right? So especially if you see the number here, right? So it says one. Forget about the half. It says 1, 2, 3, and 5 in 8, right? This is a very interesting number, right? So what you see here is, right, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, 5 plus 3 is 8. It goes on like that. This sequence is called a Fibonacci sequence, right? It is a very natural occurring sequence which happens all across the world, right? For example, in a sunflower, the number of design that you see in the center, right, always end up having one of these numbers. So it's a naturally occurring number, and it's followed in trading. People who do trading, right, intraday trading, currency trading, stock trading, whatever kind of trading, they must know, they must be aware of this, right? Fibonacci levels, they call it. So generally, when a market trend touches this number, it bounces off either way, right? It is generally a thing. So these are naturally occurring numbers. So what the team is either given, and it's not mandatory the team has this number. They can also have a very simple number like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So they have this card, and the product owner says, okay, we have to create a wish list. Now, according to you, how many user points can be given to this, right? And everybody selects a card and they hide it to themselves. And when the product owner says, please show your card, everybody shows it to the product owner. Now, if the number, say for example, everybody agrees that it has a weight of 5 story points, right? Then it is easy. Everybody is on the same page. But what if somebody says 3, 8, and 13, and 12? Then there is a lot of discrepancy. That means either people have not understood the requirement, or they have a lot of clarifications from the product owner. They clarify and then they agree on a number, say 8, right? So 8 is kept on the table. Now, every other story that we will try to estimate will be based on this number 8. So for example, say next is viewing the wish list in his account. Now that has to either be something that the team can do within 8 or after 8. So it becomes very easy to relate, right? If we are not blindly saying that, okay, I think this will take 3 days or 8 days this will take around, I will give it around 50 story points. Why? You cannot give 50 story points. You have to be very close to it. Either it has to be done, either it is something easy and can be done within 8, or it is something which is difficult and has to be done after 8, right? So what we are doing here, we started doing relative comparison. So we have one task, and basis how easy or difficult the task is, we start putting the other tasks next to it. I hope you are all able to understand it. Now, just one important thing to remember here, not only in planning poker, the other things that you see here, right? Something that goes beyond 20, we will not consider it as a user story. That will be taken as an epic, right? Because it's too big for the team to do, right? So that is something called planning poker. Next is t-shirt sizing. So if you have small tasks that has to be done, say maybe 10, 15, 20 tasks, it is easy to do the planning poker. But when you have too many tasks, say you have 100, 150 tasks that you have to kind of look into, we call something called we do something called t-shirt sizing. So t-shirt sizing or t-shirt sizes is where we have say maybe 4 cards such as L, which is large, medium, small, and XS. We keep it on the table, right? And then the team, what it does is, it kind of starts putting the task there, right? First, we take up one task, and then, for example, if it's a medium, we keep it on a medium, and then start relating the task to the next task, and then either put it as okay, this task is something that will take more than this task which was in medium, so let me put it in large. No, this task is something which is less compared to the medium, so I'll put it in the small. So this is how they do. So t-shirt sizing, and if you see the other system here, bucket system, it is almost the same. So we have a bucket or a bowl which is kept on the table, and we put a number to it, something like Fibonacci, right? Fibonacci, sorry. So we have 1, 2, 3, right, 5, 8, and 13. So people start putting their putting the user stories that they think they will complete in that particular time in that particular bucket. So this is how we estimate. So a lot of relative estimation is happening rather than just saying task 1 will take maybe 10 hours and task 25 will take maybe 100 hours. That is not happening. Once a task is decided, the other tasks are relatively compared to this task and then put it in the different bucket or different sizes. Now dot voting is something similar. So we have say maybe feature 1, user story 1, user story 2, and user story 3. Each of the team members are given 2 or 3 colors, right, of say maybe sticky notes or whatever they have to cut, and then they have to stick. For example, if they stick a green, here is an example of green and red. If they stick, the more number of green they stick, that means it's easier to do. The more number of red dots that they put here, it's difficult to do. So if, for example, if you see the user story 3, there is green also and there is red also. That means people are confused. Some people are thinking that it's very easy to do, and some people are thinking, no, it's very difficult to do. That is where the product owner comes in, pitches in and says, okay, guys, I think there is some confusion here. Some people are believing it's easy. Some people think it is hard. What is the confusion? And then a discussion happens, and then they kind of come to a conclusion. So these are some different ways, methods of kind of estimating on the agile, right? Now the final subject for the day is how do we track? How do we track the velocity? What is the velocity? Velocity is something where how much time the team is taking to complete the story points in a sprint. That is called a velocity, right? Ideally, see, in a real time, if we have to speak very honestly, the team will not be able to give the exact number of story points, right? They will take some time. They will take maybe 1 sprint, 2 sprint, 3 sprints to actually understand the requirement. And ideally the agile world across the companies of following generally say that their teams take 2 to 3 sprints to kind of start estimating in a very clear way, right? Because it's natural. Even though you're doing relative estimation, you might be wrong somewhere. So it takes about 1 or 2 sprints for the team to understand, okay, yeah, I think we are all together in this. We all understand this together equally, somewhere very close, not have too much difference, right? So how do we track this? So if you see on the left, each user story is given a point, right? So these points are added here. Say, for example, there are 200 points, and on the left axis is where you see the number of points. Right, on the right axis are the number of days. For example, in a 2 week sprint, imagine 1 week has 5 working days. So two sprints will have 10 days. So the team has to complete these tasks in those 10 days. So this orange line that you see is a graph which shows that if they start doing this 20 20 20 every day, so it's just 200 divided by 10 is 20. So if they start doing 20 points every day, then this is how the line should look, right? But the team sometimes might do more, the team sometimes might do less, right? And if you see on the right, this is how it will be. So if they are above the line, that means they are behind schedule, right? They are taking more time, or they are not clear. And the moment they start understanding it, it will come below this the average, the line right here, the center line, which is the task versus the time taken. And this is how it should look. For example, if they're going above, it is something we need to worry. And if they're below, that means they are completing the task, the users to the story points within the time. So this is how the progress is tracked. Now the question that you all must be having is, how do we convert this user story points into hours? Or let me come back here, right? Now we estimated at user story, right? We gave some points and we thought, okay, where will it go? Will it go to large? Will it go to small? Will it go to excess? How do we do this at the task level? The team is responsible to do this at the task level, right? So they say, okay, as let me just come back here again. See, here they say, okay, this is a feature and I'm taking up 3 user stories, right? And 3 user stories will have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 tasks. The tasks are planned at the hour level, right? The user stories are estimated at the point level. So the team, once they estimate this, they say that, okay, I think we can take 2 or 3 user stories, right? I think this is a time in this 2 weeks or 1 week of Scrum or 2 weeks of Scrum we are doing, we'll be able to do only 2 user stories. They take those 2 user stories and how they do the tasks. So for example, one task they might do in 2 days, one task they might do in 1 day. It depends on them how they want to break it. But the estimation is done at a user story level, and it is also tracked at a user story level by giving points to each of them. The task depends on the team on how soon or how they want to complete it. So with this, I stop here, and I leave the session now open for question and answer.
Uh, Thank you very much, Vaji. It's a wonderful session that you presented. The way you presented, I love this, and I hope I will have continuously sessions for this agile process, right? How many other any other sessions are remaining? I mean, the
Yes.
last session, I missed last session. I would like to have this last session. If you can send the URL, I'll download and or I can go and watch uh, YouTube.
Great. So, Mr. Mohammed, thank you very much for your wonderful comments. Really appreciate it. You can log into, I mean, you can go to YouTube and search for Resemble Systems. So we have a channel there. I think the first or the second video should be something called Introduction to Agile, Webinar 1.
Okay.
So,
Any more on
yes.
uh,
So,
on
yes, Mr.
upcoming
Mohammed.
upcoming sessions?
Yes, we have one more. We will have one or two more on how to adopt Agile to your organization. Right? I think this was one of the comments that we received in the first webinar. That this is very nice, but how do we adopt? Like we are using waterfall or we are using a hybrid. So how do we adopt it? So we will be doing one presentation on how you can transition from what you're doing into slowly moving into the agile world. So there'll be one webinar on how do we do that. So I think either one or two webinars on that.
Excellent. I'm glad to join the remaining sessions. I'm
Thank,
sure I'm waiting for that.
thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed. Appreciate that. Thank you.
That's all.
Um, Thank you very much for a great session. My question is related to which one is the most frequently used estimation method in Scrum? What you have shown out of four. What is, as per your experience, which one is the most suitable and frequently used?
See, the most frequently used, it depends on how matured your organization is, right? How well you have
Yes, yes.
adopted to the agile, right? If your organization is really matured, if you have done projects, agile projects earlier, and if the team members understand the core values of agile and how important it is to estimate it right, then I think planning poker or the t-shirt sizing or bucketing will work. But what we generally do is, right, we do not have you don't have these cards you get in the market, right? These Fibonacci cards, these are called Scrum cards, you get it in the market. But if you do not have the cards, no need to worry. What you can do is you can ask them to take a piece of paper, and when the product owner is reading out the user story, they can write it and hide it. And all they have to do is, once the product, you can do this virtually also, right? Or a Teams call or a or a Zoom call, when all of them are on the video and they show the number that they have written. So if anything, like I said, is beyond 21, if somebody is giving it more than 21, then the product owner should get an idea that this is a very big requirement and it has to be moved as an epic. It cannot be taken as a user story and further given to the team to work on it. And if below that, say for example, most people are coming at a 14 to 16 kind of a range, then we take an average out of it, and 15 is the number that we give for the user story. So this happens in a real time thing. Even though we might not have the cards, we might not have the bowls and other things, right? We kind of ask the team to write it on a paper and show it. So this is a very easy way to do it. I hope I was able to answer
Okay.
that question.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we are running out of time. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. I hope this was educational. I hope you were able to understand the Scrum a little better compared to what you must have already known, or if this was new. I hope we were able to give you some good knowledge on how Scrum works, what are the team members, what are the different artifacts, and how do we do the estimation, and how is it finally tracked, right? The next webinar we will have is on adopting agile. So if you really think, if you really feel that agile is the way to go and it is really helpful compared to what you've been doing now, then we can have a session, and we will have a session on how do we slowly move from a very orthodox organization which follows a very strict processes and a lot of sign-offs and all. How do we move? So it is a cultural change and it has to happen from a management, but we will speak on few things, right? How some organizations have adopted agile and how it has helped them. So we'll look at some case studies, and we'll also look at few ideas on how you can groom your team members. There are some certain certifications, which are available in the market, which you can ask your team members to do, or you can bring in an agile coach who can come and transform your organization. So these are some things that we will talk in the next webinar. I hope that will be helpful and help you move towards agile and become more agile in your work. So I thank everyone for joining this webinar again, and I wish you all a very good day ahead. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Thank you.